Have you ever felt this deep, aching need for connection, but then found yourself, for some reason, pushing people away? It is one of the strangest, most painful paradoxes of the human mind.
I mean, it just defies all logic, right? This desperate need for closeness, somehow twisting itself into behaviors that build the very walls of isolation you're terrified of. This is what's known as the loneliness loop. It's like an invisible script running in the background of your mind, turning a fundamental human need into a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So, to really understand this loop, we have to completely reframe what loneliness actually is. It's not some character flaw or just a simple feeling of sadness. No, it's something much, much deeper than that. On the surface, this is exactly how it feels. Just a purely negative experience. A painful, persistent state of disconnection that seems to offer absolutely nothing of value. And because that personal experience is so powerful, it's really easy to believe that that's the entire story.
But here's where we have to draw a very sharp line between two really different things. See, being alone, that's just an objective fact. It's the physical absence of other people. But feeling lonely, that's a subjective internal experience. It's the perception of being disconnected, a feeling you can have even in a crowded room. And that distinction, it's absolutely crucial.
So then, what is the purpose of this painful feeling? Well, if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, that ache of loneliness, it isn't a bug in our system. It's actually a critical feature.
There's this theory that proposes loneliness is basically an ancient alarm hardwired right into our biology. Think about it. Just like physical pain protects your body from getting hurt, loneliness evolved to protect your social body. For our earliest ancestors, being cast out from the tribe was a literal death sentence.
So this is how the system is supposed to work, right? A threat to your social bonds triggers that painful alarm of loneliness. That pain then motivates you to go out and repair those connections, which keeps you safe within the group and ultimately increases your chances of survival. It's actually a brilliant, elegant survival mechanism when you think about it. But what happens when this ancient alarm system gets programmed by our modern experiences? What happens when that wiring gets a little bit crossed? See, that biological signal of loneliness is the same for pretty much everyone, but how we learn to respond to that signal, well, that is deeply personal. It's something that gets shaped by our earliest and most formative relationships. For some people, especially those who experienced inconsistent care in childhood, where affection and safety felt unpredictable, a specific pattern can emerge. It's called anxious attachment, and it's defined by this persistent underlying fear that you will inevitably be left alone. This fear becomes the lens through which that entire alarm signal is interpreted. And this is where the whole system really starts to malfunction. That ancient alarm, filtered through this very modern fear of abandonment, creates a devastating and paradoxical loop. Chronic loneliness doesn't just make you sad, it fundamentally rewires how you perceive the world around you. Your brain enters this state of constant, low-level alert, a kind of hypervigilance, always scanning for social threats, whether they're real or just imagined. You start to feel fundamentally unsafe around other people. This state of hypervigilance creates these powerful cognitive biases. Your brain begins to actively look for evidence that confirms its deepest fear, that you are going to be rejected. So a neutral facial expression is suddenly seen as hostile, and unreturned text becomes proof of abandonment. You start to expect, remember, and perceive negativity everywhere, filtering reality through this lens of potential rejection.
And this internal state of constant, low-grade threat, it doesn't just stay internal. It inevitably bleeds out into our behavior, often in ways that seem to make absolutely no sense at all. Research shows that an anxious attachment style strongly predicts what's known as a fear of being single. Now, this isn't just, a preference for being in a relationship. It's a global, distressing anxiety about the very state of being unpartnered.
And so here we are, at the very core of the paradox. This intense fear of being single, which is born from a deep-seated fear of abandonment, can actually motivate actions that actively sabotage the very relationship someone is so desperate to hold on to. It's astonishing, really. Studies have found that this fear of being single is a key predictor of infidelity. Now, why on earth would that be? Well, it's believed to be a misguided subconscious strategy, a form of bet hedging. The twisted logic goes something like this. If abandonment is inevitable, I need a backup plan to avoid the pain of being alone. Of course, this very behavior makes the feared outcome, the end of the relationship, dramatically more likely.
This constant state of perceived threat, this alarm that just never turns off,
isn't just a mental experience. The mind doesn't exist in a vacuum. It takes a heavy, measurable toll on the physical body. The lonely brain tends to stay in a semi-alert state even during sleep. From a pure survival perspective, if you feel unsafe, you can't really afford deep, restorative rest. You have to stay vigilant. And this leads to more fragmented, less refreshing sleep, which of course impacts everything else. Just the sheer amount of cognitive energy it takes for this constant threat monitoring comes at a cost. Studies show that social isolation impairs our executive functions. That's the brain's command center for things like focus and self-control. Your mental battery is just constantly being drained by vigilance, leaving less power for everything else. Loneliness is consistently linked to higher levels of the stress hormone cortisol. The body is essentially locked in a chronic, low-grade state of fight or flight. And over time, this constant chemical stress can contribute to inflammation and a whole host of other negative health consequences.
And so, the loop is complete. A perceived threat of disconnection triggers these cognitive biases. The biases then fuel self-defeating behaviors, and those behaviors create more actual isolation, which in turn confirms the brain's initial fear that the world is a threatening place. The system just feeds itself, spiraling inward.
So we're left with a final, crucial question. If loneliness is a signal, an alarm bell, maybe its message isn't just to desperately seek connection outside of ourselves. Perhaps the alarm is also telling us to look inward, to the hidden patterns, the cognitive biases, and the deep-seated fears that keep true connection just out of reach. Thank you for watching.